All right, we are live. Welcome to the Breeding Better Comics podcast, if I can speak today. I'm your host, Blinder, and with me today is yet another WildStorm veteran, superstar inker, Sal Regla. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to interact with the fans and maybe perhaps ask a few of your questions and some from the fans as well.
Of course, my pleasure. It's an honor to have all of you guys hop on the show and speak about your experiences, share some tips. So, speaking of experiences, let's go all the way back to how you started with art. What artist, because it's usually an artist looking at someone else, which artist influenced you so much that you wanted to go, you know what, I'm gonna do this?
Well, I had always drawn, as long as I can remember reading comics. But as I grew older, probably the greatest influences in my life were Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Will Sportasio, Rob Liefeld, um, Lee Weeks. But it wasn't until my early 20s that I really got into drawing comics, and I think it was I had just turned 20. I decided that I was going to give this a shot, decide to be a comic book artist and see if I could pursue that dream. So I started getting a portfolio together. Went to a couple of conventions and met Jim Lee. I wasn't successful the first time at San Diego Comic Con, but I gave him my portfolio and he was able to give me some pointers. I think met them back at Long Beach and or one of those conventions in LA. And after that, I was hired to work for Jim Lee. Also had an offer from Extreme Studios and Rob Liefeld at the time, and Shadow Hack Jim Valentino. But Scott Williams also had been one of my greatest influences because I was penciling and inking my own stuff. So I decided and opted to work for Jim Lee, and kind of everything just took off from there.
Awesome, like you had like you have quite a few influences that overlap with a lot of people that go into that clean Wildstorm style, which you could argue is like one of these styles to go for, especially at that time.
Yes, I love them. And so what happened soon after that? I moved over to it was called Amish Studios at the time. If you guys can remember that, Jim set me up in an apartment, and I just came in and I started looking at all these influences, and right off the bat, I realized that people like Scott Campbell and Brett were at a completely different level than I was in terms of their penciling abilities. These were guys that had devoted their entire lives for that very purpose, to just become comic book artists. And for me, yeah, I probably spent maybe the last 2.5 years getting myself ready. So in terms of competing with it, it was almost an impossibility. So Brett, he needed an inker at the time, I think. So Jim started leaning towards having me become an inker, and that's how I ended up inking Brett. And in the first place, also, he was a great guy from the very beginning, and was my best friend at the studio. So it was a really good match, if you will. It was a really fun experience, those early years at Wildstorm.
Oh yeah, like every time I interview or just talk to someone that was in Wildstorm in those early years, they always have like the best stories when it comes like within the comic book industry talks. Like there'd be people working from, the morning shift. There'd be people doing the night shift. You'd be playing basketball in between pages or something. It must have been like an awesome experience to have, and I'm sad that that type of environment doesn't really exist nowadays.
Yes, I just got in contact with Marat Michaels, who used to draw Brigade over at Extreme Studios, and those were some fantastic times. I specifically remember this particular instance where we had a basketball game between Extreme Studios versus Wildstorm. So if you can just imagine, there was a gym at some school, at some high school, and I can't even remember if it was in San Diego or if it was somewhere in LA. But I just remember having this amazing basketball game. I know that WildStorm won, so we have bragging rights. But those were some really, really amazing moments. And if you can just imagine, I was a 20-year-old who was just kind of realizing his dream. And not only did I break into the industry, but just got to interact and learn from these icons, these iconic, mythical, titanic figures of the industry.
Oh yeah.
Jim Lee, Will Spartasio, Mark Silvestri, Scott Williams, who, in my opinion, is the greatest inker who ever put a pen to paper. I know that's up for debate for many people. I don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities, but that's just, as far as I'm concerned, he's just on a completely different level
Yeah, I mean,
in
art
terms.
is so subjective that whoever you choose as your favorite inker isn't necessarily a wrong answer anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And also from the younger generation of the artists that were working at the studio, I think at that time, as far as Jim's section of the studio, he had Brett, J. Scott Campbell, Alex Gardner, Trevor Scott, and Scotty Clark, who also was a great friend of mine, along with Alex Gardner, who were teamed up on Stormwatch. So those were some really, really, really fantastic times in terms of influences. Being able to just, you know, walk over to Scott Williams's table, and he was very accommodating and nice. I think I've learned so much just from, you know, uncomfortably, probably to him, sitting behind his back and just looking about his process. And he was always very friendly, a fantastic guy and a class act. Very funny as well. Mark Silvestri too. Just everybody was really accommodating in and down to earth. Um,
That's awesome
Scotty
to hear.
Clark, J. Scott Campbell, and then Brett Booth as well.
Yeah, that place was the place to be. Whether you were like young, just starting out, or you were someone just already in comics for quite a amount of time, but looking to level up your art. Like even today, most of those guys are still top tier artists, and I don't know that there's like a newcomer that's even close to them.
Just on the inking part of it, or of the inking aspect of the industry, if you think about all the inkers that came out of that particular studio, over at Extreme, you had Norm Ratman and Danny Mickey. Uh, but on our end, over at WildStorm, out of that, I'm just gonna call it the Scott Williams, school or tree or
Yeah,
branch. And I know that a lot of other people are influenced by him. So just to kind of, you know, pretend or think that we were the only people influenced by Scott would be ridiculous. But just to name a few, and I don't want to leave anyone out, but you have some really amazing talents. Scott, Trevor Scott, Sandra Hope, who is an amazing, amazing talent.
oh yeah,
Alex Alex Garner, who has not been inking much, but who is a magnificent, magnificent artist. I'm not trying to leave anything out here. Richard Friend.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Rich friend.
Um,
That there's so many people. Like when you look at the top inkers, it's like oh, it's like 8 out of 10 of them are from WildStar.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just some of my influences as far as when I started to kind of develop my own style because I went in there very green, and I think because I hadn't spent so much time developing my craft, a lot of these guys like Brett and Jeffrey Scott and Alex Gardner had devoted a lot more time for it. So for me, I was very raw and fresh, and I couldn't help but in my the way I think about how I ink. I don't think of myself as being as talented as those people that I mentioned, but I think a lot. I took a lot of elements. I also don't want to forget about Richard Friend, who was a magnificent inker out of the
He is
studio
awesome.
there. He, so all those influences just kind of molded the person that I am. Again, I just mentioned that I think Scott is my favorite inker of all time. Um, People are going to have to come and fight me if they dispute that. Of course, I'm joking.
Yeah, yeah.
My another guy that I really love his work, and I think there's so much balance and beauty to what he does is Matt Banning. I've never really actually told him this, and so he's probably completely unaware of that. But I really really love his work. You're familiar with him, of course, right?
Yeah, he is Bat. I think he signs it with like
Yes,
Bat with double T. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, dude,
yeah,
his
he's
his
amazing.
lines are exquisite.
Yes, absolutely. It's just poetry. It's just elegance personified.
Yep, yep.
Um,
That's the perfect phrase for it.
yes, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I really love Danny Mickey. I think he's just an amazing, amazing talent. Um, Other influences, I would say, kind of a little bit more old school and not in the kind of Wildstorm mold, but I love who was the anchor for John Romita Jr. Klaus Janson. So I love his stuff. Terry Austin, when you look at his run on X-Men with John Byrne, those are some beautiful beautiful inks. But my I think that my greatest influences would be probably Gardner, um, Scott Williams, and Matt Banning. I'm not going to say I don't say and when I think about influences is it's not so much that people are going to see them in your work because I don't really think that's how it manifests itself. I think that you try to take certain elements
Yep,
from
yep.
what they do or what you see them do, and then you try to incorporate them, and then it's just kind of an amalgamation of what you see in their work. So, if there was any advice, because people hit me up on Instagram with questions about my inking style and how I went about the process of defining what my inks look like. I think it's for me it's an evolving process, but my advice would be to take certain elements to from like these titans of the industry that I just mentioned and try to incorporate some elements of what you see, what they like. Is it the looseness of the line, or is it the opposite? Is it the crisp? Because there's different ways of approaching things, and so in terms of like people when they ink Brett, it doesn't matter who inks Brett. There's a certain element of his work that is going to shine through no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So if you reduce that page small enough, you're not looking at the detail. It's gonna look to me, it looks amazing. I love it when Brett inks himself. So take some of those elements, and it's not necessarily that people are going to see it in your work, or you're going to become an inker that is a clone of that one person. But you take elements from here, from there, and that sort of becomes your style and who you are, and that's I mean I think art itself, everyone is taking references from other artists and incorporated what they see or think they see, and then something else happens, the beautiful progression of things takes place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done it myself. I'm on Brett's Patreon and I do ink a few of his pieces as practice, and I can see some elements of that in my own work, whether it's the penciling part or the inking part. So yeah, you just go
And for
cherry pick whatever you like and then just mix it all up.
yes, sure. And for me, I love Danny Mickey. But for whatever reason, I can't really replicate that end of the spectrum that much. You know, the beautiful. If I mean, I'm gonna get really corny right now, but if Bat is a symphony, you know, Danny Mickey is a rock band,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
filling up a stadium. So I don't think I don't know if that's a good way of representing who they are, but I think you're starting to get an idea of two different ends of the spectrum. At least that's how I see it. And you know, Scott Williams is somewhere in between, and that's what I love so much about him. You know, that he could take elements. So of course he's very clean, but it's also the line has a texture and an organic feel to it. Not to say that Bats doesn't, which it does, but there's a lot more harmony in his work.
I see. Yeah, it's a process, and I do think that people should, before looking to style, they do need to learn some basics.
True. And of the newer of the because I stepped away from the industry for a bit. But of when I came back, of the newer batch of, I'm just gonna call them kids because it's the ridiculous term. I'm 50 now, so to me, they're always gonna be kids. I love Daniel Enriquez, how he incorporates like the manga elements into his work
Yep.
and the textures. And also Jonathan Glapion, I think is a fantastic talent. So I don't want to offend and leave anybody out, but those are the people that I see, the old titans and of the industry that we all know about, and then just kind of this new school. And I'm really excited for what this new element and the digital links are bringing, because there's an entire world of possibilities that is opening up.
Oh yeah, a lot of
People
toys to
tell me
play
that
with.
Yeah, people tell me that my inks, my digital inks look really organic and traditional, but you know, I don't see it that way. I see beauty and everything, and it's just a next evolution of things. That's an ever evolving process.
Yeah, that very well said. Now, you mentioned that you stepped away from the industry. Where were you all this time? What were you doing?
Um, well, it's kind of a complicated question, but I all my life I've had two passions, and one of them, I'm not going to put one above the other because I love them equally, but one of them is sport, and specifically in sports, I love soccer, and specifically within soccer, I love goalkeeping. So I had always wanted to coach and train goalkeepers. Um, my wife and I invested in real estate early on, so it gave me a little flexibility. I think Tyler Kirkham at the time was asking me to help him out at DC, but at that point, I had a conversation with my lovely wife Candy, and she's always been so supportive. I always had this dream of training young goalkeepers, and so I just kind of went for it, and it was something that I really wanted to invest a lot of time and effort into it. So I did that for many years. I ran our business, and you know helped raise the kids. We run the day-to-day operations of our mom and pop real estate business, and I just went in 100% into the other. Um, so I train. I still do to this day. I train, uh, you know, high level goalkeepers, or pretty decent level goalkeepers, and I still do, I'm working on Brett's stuff now.
Awesome, and it was so, I don't want to say random because it might be a bit too insulting, but you just popped up one day and you just popped up in Brett's feed and he's like, "Hey, SAL REGLA is back." And he's thinking my stuff, and I'm like, "Wait a minute."
Okay. Well, let me give just a little bit of the backstory on that. It's just kind of by chance that I ended up inking again. I wasn't with the pandemic. I told you, I mentioned to you before. I don't know if it was on the live stream, but I bought an iPad for my daughter, and
Yep, yep.
I had played around with Clip Studio and all of that. So I picked it up a little bit more during the pandemic. We just had all this downtime, and I started drawing like really cringy portraits of my family and myself. I'll share one that I just did of my son Salvador Jr. because his birthday's coming up, so I'm gonna put it up on my Instagram page.
Awesome.
But I just through Instagram, I was drawing all these cringy portraits. I think I probably had like 20 followers at the time, and Brian Heartless, who runs a WildStorm Facebook group, contacted me, and it was like a couple of times I wasn't on Facebook, and he asked me if I could just, kind of. He thought it would be interesting for me to join the group and set up a Facebook page and interact with the fans a little bit. So, having been away from the industry for a long time, I can remember the days where we would travel across the country and go and do signings all over the place. So I kind of missed that a little bit because I feel like I took it for granted. I was so young, 20 years old, and
Oh
I
yeah.
was I was working next to Jim Lee and Brett Booth, so every day was a dream to me. And in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning came around because Brett was a night owl at the time. I know he has a different schedule now, but 5 o'clock in the morning would come, and so we would leave the studio. And I still remember vividly what he would order. It's the Super Bird from Denny's. Uh, so I've had a few Super Birds in his honor, over the years. And so he contacted me and started interacting a little bit with the group. I'm not a big Facebook guy. I check it every now and then. The best way to contact me is through Instagram, and I do make an effort to respond to everybody. And this is one of the reasons why I agreed to do this podcast live stream, is that I get a lot of the same questions asked all the time, but I kind of
Oh yeah.
going off in a tangent. So Brian, we were in contact. He wanted me to do a commission piece, and I just, I hadn't finished anything really. I would ask Brett, hey man, can you send me like, some pages just so I can doodle and pass the time. It was just the beginning of the pandemic, so he would send some X-Men pages. I would, like ink half a panel and then send it back to him. We said, "Hey, that's cool, man. That's it." So, um, Brian mentioned that he wanted me to do this commission. So I did. As you guys have seen it around, is the Lost Serpent Prince Backlash. All the three characters that influenced
Yep.
Brett Backlash, and so that's the backstory. So I inked that piece, and then he let me know. I think Brett's looking for an inker. Would you be interested? And I it wasn't even had the thought hadn't even entered my mind to get back into comics. So one thing led to another. I got in contact with Brett again. We caught up a little bit because we kind of lost touch. He would call me if some cataclysmic event happened, at the studio. He would pick up the phone or pick up the phone. Like just to give you an idea, um, when Scott Clark passed away, we talked briefly. Then we wouldn't talk for a year or so. Or I, shoot him an email. Hey, these are my kids, my family, whatever. So he said, "Yeah, I'm looking to do this new project. Will you be interested in doing it?" I said, "Well, look, honestly, I don't really even know how long it takes me to make a page." So off of that one page that I inked, the commission for Brian, he kind of went about that, and he started sending me pages from the prelude, and that's how it all that's how it all began. That's how this all came about. I reconnected with my love for his pencils, and I think he's an amazing, amazing talent.
He
After
is.
I
He is
left
awesome.
to to find him have the stature that he deserves, because I don't think there's anyone that works as hard as he does in the industry. I mean, I
Oh
could
no.
be wrong.
I,
I don't know a
I've
lot of people.
I've been
Yes, go
following
ahead.
comics for a while now, and there is nobody near Brett, and he has sadly underappreciated, especially by the industry. Not so much by the fans, I think, but by the whole rigmarole of the corporate and the industry and yada yada yada. I think those people underappreciate him, but he is a monster of an artist.
He's an amazing, amazing talent. And so the more I started doing it, the more, and like I said at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'll do this. I'll help him out. I'll see what happens. But just right now, I'm at a point where I really want to ink his stuff, and it's really rewarding. And I'm about to show you guys a little bit about, how I go about it. But the beauty of his pencils, it's all there. There's so much of it. I just, I can't express it in any other way other than, if there is anything, if you guys are lucky enough to do something that you really, truly love, that's what it's like up to me, getting up in the morning. I don't sleep a lot. I probably sleep about 4 to 5 hours a day. That's probably going to cost me one day. I get up in the morning, start working on this stuff, go and do my other work, go and, manage all the stuff that I need to manage. But it's a really, really great experience. Every inker should get the opportunity to ink Brett. And,
Oh yeah.
I know that a lot of guys do it, on Instagram, and he has his Patreon page. And the fact that anybody is able to do that, to me, it's really cool, because that's, as I said before, I'm really, really excited to see uh, what what the future brings in terms of inking and art itself, the penciling, the digital aspect of it, because there's, like, the possibilities are almost limitless.
Oh yeah, there's so much you can do with digital now. There's no need for us to talk about time saving, especially with like filling blanks, but all the tools that you have at your disposal with a little bit of 3D, but I think some people or most people haven't truly mastered how to use those tools because it is also yet another learning process. But in regards to like the simplest thing, the difference of brushes you can use on one page without having, to worry about smudging the page or anything, you
Yes.
can just grab one brush for hair, another brush for like leather, or another brush for like, whatever.
Yeah, right now I feel like I'm overdoing it a lot because it's still so new in the process. I probably ink with about 25 brushes right now. So it's a little nutty. I if I needed to, I could ink with one or two brushes, but for whatever reason, it's just I jump all over the place. There's no structure of it as to what I do. So I like to keep that spontaneous. I don't know if it actually works or not, because a lot of these brushes end up having, like, like very slight variations of what other brushes do. But I really enjoy, the digital work. I don't see myself ever inking traditionally. That is not something that I'm interested in. I know that's probably, you know kind of weird. I'm not sure. I don't know what percentage of the inking or penciling community does digital art, but I myself don't see myself ever inking traditionally. I don't know
Yeah,
how
it's just
everybody feels.
it is just a tool. Like I've been drawing for 5 years, and I started learning drawing with like pencils, but I think it was like a year in, I got a tablet and I've been digital ever since.
Yeah, it's impossible to go back, and this is how naive and out of touch I was. So all the time I spent out of the industry, every now and then I do some Photoshop, and obviously it had its shortcomings in the beginning when it came to inking, not so
Oh
much
yeah.
about pencil. But in my mind, I thought there would never be a program that could replicate what you can do on paper. But I mean, so sadly mistaken, and that's so ironic to me. The
Yeah, I
fact that
mean,
you can do.
both Procreate and Clip Studio were specifically made for drawing, and that's good. We need more of those. There's a few other apps too that were made specifically for drawing, but yeah, I'm also happy that the technology is moving so far forward that we can pretty much replicate traditional process on digital medium. I've seen a few people who whose digital and traditional work are like a one-to-one comparison, and I'm like, that is that is not possible. But yeah, that I was proving wrong as well.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see that. I toyed with the idea of doing some. What I meant is, of course, yes, I'll draw something traditionally or ink something traditionally, but in terms of like industry work, you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah.
But I've thought about doing some brush and quill, uh, work to just kind of show it on Instagram and to see how I went about it. Pulling my lines, pushing the lines, where the movement comes from, how I hold the brush because everybody holds the brush differently, and
Oh yeah.
the pen. Yes. So you want
Yeah,
to
well,
talk a little bit about the process and how I go about this? I mean, some
yeah.
people might find it ridiculous. Um, I'll just I'll ink a little bit maybe, but I'll talk more about maybe the technical aspects of it and show guys a whole bunch of work. And hopefully, Brett's not going to fire me because I showed you way too much.
Well, I would like to say that I have an okay relationship with him, and he shouldn't. Hopefully, he's not gonna get too mad.
Hopefully, he's not listening right now and just
Oh
like
yeah. He's dialing the phone right now to tell you to stop.
he's going to ask me right now. So I can you see my screen now?
Yep, you still have that. I forget what this character's name is. The one with the all the belts and then the
Lancelot.
leather and oh yeah, Lancelot. I love it when some of these like you could even say mythical characters are switched around gender wise. I'm also like an anime fan, and
Yes.
there's
Yes.
this franchise called Fate where King Arthur is basically a girl, and it's awesome.
So, is everybody able to see my screen?
Yep, they are now.
Okay. So what happens here is dimensions that I work on. When I was working on the $350 iPad, which is when I was helping out on Spawn, there was a limited amount of there was limits in terms of how big the canvas could be.
Oh
So
yeah,
the highest dimension that I could have in terms of inches was 8 by 12 at 600 DPI. So, given the limits of that, that's how it worked on. Then I bought this new iPad Pro and I bumped it up to 11 by 17 at 600 DPI. But I found it that I liked inking at the smaller canvas because I was getting in there too tight, and
yep.
noodling everything. And with the bigger canvas, it was really affecting how the overall product looked. So what I do is I create the canvas, and the canvas here is, let's see, canvas information. Let's go to dimensions. It's 480 pixels by 7,200 pixels, but that's the physical width or the physical dimensions are 8 by 12 at 600 DPI. Done.
Yeah,
This is ridiculous.
isn't
Yes,
8 by 12 basically more or less the print format?
not sure about that, but this is the size that I work on. So everything that Brett sends me, occasionally, like I'm working on a piece for Andrew Dahlhaus right now for his own creator own uh, book, and he wants me to work on it at 11 by 17 at 600 DPI because it's normally it was not a double page spread, but he's going to expand it to use as a double page spread, the image, so he wants it to be as crisp in terms of resolution as possible.
Yep, yep, understandable.
So I make the canvas, I pull in this, and people are probably going to ask, why wouldn't you just take this directly into Clip Studio? But this is just me. I there's a lot of strange things that I do, and my wife will be, first in line explaining many of them. So I take the PSD, I send it to Clip Studio, and then from here it opens up. When I was doing this, incredibly, I would ink over the pencils like this. But there's this, like, I don't even know what the names are, but if you look at the layers here, whatever this icon is right here, if you go to the layer property, and you have that pencil layer, go to the layer property and you press this little guy right here, then it turns it automatically into blue line. So from there, let's turn that off. Here's the finished piece. So you guys can take a peek at it. That's me going
That is
over
awesome.
all that's penciled. And again, I'm gonna show you a lot of images so you can see my technique and stuff like that. It's not gonna be like a how-to, but I want you to see just like to when I get this image, I think about, okay, how am I gonna ink this? And so if we see the image, without the pencils. So I'm gonna take you a little bit through here. You can see that this is an image of astonishing beauty. So how am I gonna approach this? First of all, I'm biting my nails down to the core because you want to convey, you want to portray, you want to have that beauty that to me it's just perfection. So I want to do as much as I can to translate that into, you know, into the finished product. So look, there's a splatter here. Um, so okay, there's the splatter. How am I going to approach this? So I think about like what elements can be kind of loose and what elements cannot be kind of loose. So when I think of hair, um, I think of immediately. I mean, a lot of these people, a lot of the younger generations, not going to understand this reference, but Charlie's Angels and Farrah Fawcett and those iconic 1970s posters. So
Yep.
I think of hair. The hair to me has to be flowing, but it has to be perfect. I if you're gonna look at someone's hair, a woman's hair, a model's hair, it has to be flawless but flowing, and I think that's what Brett does in his work. So then I'll look at individual elements. Where am I going to put the thicknesses of the line? Is it going to be a thicker, more solid outline? How am I going to do the rendering coming out of the blacks? Okay, how am I going to go approach that? And I like to put in a lot of texture and a lot of different looks into the page. Um, so you look at all these lines, some of them are similar, but think about texture. And so you have this belt here, we have the cape. So I'm thinking, okay, what kind of lines am I going to work here? What is this going to look like? And again, thinking about my influences and what would the great Scott Williams do? What would, you know, I don't know, uh, Sandra Hope do? What would Sal Regula do? And so we move from there. And let me put my glove on here. So one of the things that I want to talk about is, I just kind of want to demystify that the pencils and the tools and everything else. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what kind of brush you use. So I'm just gonna use this is the mapping pen, um, and it's the stock. You know, it's a stock tool
From Clip Studio. Yeah.
from Clip Studio. Yeah, that's why I didn't want to have it. That I didn't want it to be a how-to book because as soon as I start inking, like people tell me all the time, I can tell you're working, man, because the conversations are different. So it doesn't really matter what tool you're using. I could probably use any one particular brush, and as long as it's going to give me thick to thick, thick to thin, I'm set. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it could be a
Yep.
square brush, it could be a triangle brush, it could be a potato brush, it could be a leaf brush. So I'm going to be fine with that. Um so what I do is then there is no like really way that I'm going to go about it. I'm just basically what I'll do is I don't even think about it. It's just randomly out of the top of my head. I'm just gonna be like, okay, this is what I'm drawing here, and that's it. Here I go about the process of inking. But oops, I changed the brush there. What I will do is, just so that it starts looking and it starts fooling me a little bit, I'll start filling in large areas of black. And so that already, in my mind, it feels like I've accomplished something. So, you know, I kind of go from there, and I'll do a lot of jumping around. So here, for instance, here, this hair, I want, oh, what the hell? I'm sorry. I just rolled it in. I have the bigger tool. So I'm just working really fast, through the image. And, inking bread, it's going to be beautiful no matter what you do. If you have any idea of how to use the tools, I'm going a little bit faster right now, but you kind of get an idea of how, I go about it. There, boom, you pop out. Like as I said, even something that I did in like 2 minutes is going to look good because the structure, or um, everything that needs to be conveyed to the viewer is already in his pencils. So there we go here. Simple. I work really fast like that. And then I start jumping around all over the page, but then at some point I'm going to say to myself, okay, I got to finish the hair because I needed to have some consistency. Because believe it or not, if I start jumping around too much, then you kind of lose the feeling of when you're doing something, how you're in the process of doing something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you walk away from it. You kind of lose that feeling, and it's like, wow, I had it, but I had to go pick up my kids from school, and you're like, start resetting your kids. So I'm like, I don't want to reset my kids or my wife, so I'm gonna finish this part yet. And there's sometimes little elements and little mistakes that sometimes you tell yourself, okay, maybe that's gonna look cool there. I'm gonna leave that. Um, but for the most part, what I've been doing now is keeping his blacks really solid. So I do a large area of black, get that tool in there. And what really kind of dresses up the line is if you just add a lot of bounce to it. So the variation in line weights is what's going to give life. Whether you push the line or whether you pull the line, that's what's going to give you that nice organic look. And if we look at um the finished product here, if we take away the pencils, you can kind of see how I'd approached it. You know, these lines look different from the lines that are coming out of the black here in this area. Let me grab a different, let me put in another layer here and grab a different color so I can show you. So, what? How did that happen? So, if you look at these lines here, they're different from these lines and these lines. And so it keeps it spontaneous and it's not as monotonous. The whole hair has a uniform look to it, so you got to keep that integrity. And
I see, I see.
I try to be very clean again with the hair. Oops, there's an accident there. I try to be very clean with the hair, with the eyes. But if you get into into the nose, then I'm going to stylize that. But the eyes are going to keep very like traditional. And then in the lips, I'll probably put some expression in there and some lines to create the illusion of light, you know. And so you pull out. Now you can see that there's there's the illusion that there's life and you know to this character, and it's breathing and all that. So there's a lot of different a lot of different types of lines there. And this is kind of what I wanted to do, kind of show the fans and people that are interested in just this particular, aspect of the industry, the inking. So if you look at all of that, it's all different.
And are those all
Here,
different brushes as well, or is it just different lines with the same brush?
let me see. Let me see here. So, um, no, particularly they're probably the same brush. I can't even remember because I just jumped from brush to brush, and I do have an idea what they look like, but what the product's gonna look like. So here, I just kind of I wanted to keep it really nice and clean, and I want this leather to be just beautiful, spot on. So we have that, and then here in the textures, I got a little bit more looser here, and I put a little bit. So if like I said, I kind of ink bread in two different ways. If you can see this is a lot more broken up, and you know, um, there's a lot more angular and a little bit more life to it. So you vary those elements. There isn't that uniformity in my eyes, in my opinion. There's a million approaches, to inking. So, and they're all valid in my opinion because that's just your expression. It's what
Yep.
you see and how you see. So to me, there isn't a wrong way to ink. There isn't a right way to ink. It's how you ink, and it's your own particular form of expression. If someone doesn't like it, that's their problem, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I can agree with that.
so you speak Spanish, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in Spanish, we like to say "cada cabeza es un mundo."
Yep.
Every head is a different world. So I respect and admire all kinds of art. So to me, this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. But in order to tie it in together, it has to have different elements. Because if I have to make everything clean, then it wouldn't have the same look. And that is just the advice I would give some aspiring inkers. And everything that I say, I just want to be very clear about it. This is my interpretation and how I go about the process of what I do. If somebody else does it differently, that's their story and that's how they go about it. But this is specifically how I feel about it. So see the difference here? There's more texture here. There's less texture here in the leather and the pants. We go back to the belt, more texture, more of a worn down look. The pouches are different. And all of this I got, this is kind of what I learned from Scott Williams. And then the hair again is just really nice and crisp. Crisp. Then here on the splatter it's just a splatter effect, you know, that I use the stock brush from it's the droplet brush from Procreate is the stock brush. So I want to demystify that from the get-go. There's no you need to have in mind what you want to put down on paper. The brush is kind of irrelevant, honestly, because you can use the brush, you can use the eraser for a certain effect. I could have inked this whole entire piece with a mapping pen, and some of it was inked with a mapping pen and things like that. But there it is. That's the final product, and I'll just show you guys one more time a closer look at Brett's pencils, which are beautiful.
They're awesome. And
Masterful
they're
work.
and they're challenging. Like if you're looking for a challenge, especially if you're like an up and coming inker, just ink some bread pieces because there's so much there.
There's so much detail, and I love it because there's so much room for expression. But if you're an up and coming inker and you're looking at kind of like which way to go with it, just think about that. His rendering lines, it's open to me. This is how I see it. It's open to a million ways of interpretation. So look at his work, beautiful, amazing detail work, and just everybody just as an anchor, try to put your own take on it. Add a little bit more shadow where the shadows are, define the form a little bit. Thickness, thin. Um, he's an amazing guy to work with, and a very very nice guy. So there it is, the finished product. I get in there a little bit, and you know, kind of render some of that out. a little bit.
Yep. And I
Add
know these
less.
are some questions that are going to pop up, so I'm going to ask them now. What size is your what size brush do you usually work with, and do you have any stabilization on? Because I think those are some of the questions that would also pop up after this.
Yeah, I do have a stabilization on. The size is irrelevant. You just gotta, like, it has to be. It's not that it's irrelevant, but it depends on how tight you're going in. And then I think the brush here is probably like, I mean, like 25%, but it depends on the size of the canvas. So
Yep.
if you're inking on 11 by 17, your brush size is going to be, that's what I mean by it's going to be irrelevant, because your brush size is going to be different than if you're working at 8 by 12 at 600 DPI. What was the other question?
Yeah, it's brush size and stabilization.
Yes, I do have stabilization. I like my stabilization at I suspect that everything is going to be different for everybody here, but mine is, I think, I'm probably about like 17. That's how I use the stabilization on. And if I
17.
wanted to have, yes, if I wanted to be more, and if I wanted to be looser, I just bump that down less, and I wanted to be tighter, just bump it up a little bit more. Um, so just a little. That's just my process a little bit. I would like to show you guys a little bit more artwork.
Yep, yep. You're
Um,
free to do
so
so.
I want to go back. I'm gonna go back to Procreate here. Go back to my gallery, and here, this is a picture I drew of my son. His name is Salvador Regla Jr. He's turning the ripe old age of 17, and so it's just a quick sketch and a little bit of painting there. Post that on his birthday. Let's go through some of these images here. This is an amazing,
Oh yeah.
amazing, amazing, and it's
When
just,
Brett can cut loose, especially when drawing something a bit more fan servicey, it's always awesome to watch.
it's amazing, and it's breathtaking. So when I see this image again, to me, okay, I see this image, and again, this is my process. Oh, so this is kind of funny. I don't have it here, but I don't know if anybody does this or if it's ridiculous. But I kind of trying to hang on to the old process a little bit, of doing comics. So once I made my blue line, I think you'll see it here. As I go and then I advance, I used to love this. I used to erase the page as I was, inking whoever's inking at the time, to see what it would look like, and I do the same thing here. So that's why you see that this image is halfway erased.
I see,
But
I
so
see.
to me, I look at this piece, and it's beautiful, just breathtaking, fan service, whatever. The nice, well, for lack of a better word, the shot. It's a money shot,
Yeah.
and the way he contorts the figures, to me, is just amazing, and it's
Oh,
all believable, and it works, and it
oh,
makes sense.
Brett's posing is among the best, not the best in the industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. I talk to him all the time about this. I mean, I let him know this because it's so beautiful, it's breathtaking. For him to achieve this status, for him to be as successful as he is now, to me, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's just finally getting his due.
Oh yeah, about bloody time if you ask me.
Oh God Almighty, yes. So this is something I tell him all the time. I'm so happy that you're finally getting your due because you have worked so hard for so long. So again, I'm looking at this. It's a nail biter again because it's a beautiful woman, and I'm just like anybody else. If you're really confident about what you do, then I'm super jealous. But I struggle and second guess myself all the time, and for me, it's part of the process. And I think is you know if you do that, then you care, and it's kind of like what makes me, who I am, and hopefully it reflects in what I do. So here again, same process. Where am I going to put the line thicknesses, the blacks? How am I going to come out of the blacks? You know, how am I going to approach this back area? This particular area here, is it going to be solid black? Hold on, let me grab a brush so you can see. So is this area here, is that going to be solid black? So am I gonna make this black and then pull out? Or am I gonna break that up, go to black? Or am I going to just keep that open all the way through? And he's very gracious and nice about it, but you know, sometimes if I second guess myself and I think, okay, I don't know if he would approve of that, then I always take out the time because it's his vision and it's his work, and I have no illusions about it. You know, he's the one driving the bus. It's his talent that I'm piggybacking on, you know, for some notoriety and everything like that. So I always give him, you know, I have him approve every page, and if I have like a certain doubt, okay, should I fill this out? Should I use the zip? Should I not use the zip? Then I always run it by him.
Yeah, it's
So
awesome that nowadays, even if you're not in a studio, we have this mass communication with it. You can literally just send them works in progress and have like instant feedback and be like, "Hey, step A or step B."
yeah, I do that all the time. Because again, and especially in this, because it's his own baby, it's his own creator own project,
Yeah.
and it's his vision. It's not my vision. It's just my interpretation of what I think he wants. You know, and so again, what am I going to do here with these areas here? What are we going to do with light? You know, am I going to make these more organic, or do I want them to be edgy? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then the backgrounds, um, there's not a lot of background here. So this page is super fun. I actually, so as I'm inking, you know, for instance, these straps, these laces, they're kind of a challenge for me to ink. So what I do is just kind of, I try to create a brush that will be able to accomplish that. So, and then here you look at the finished piece. Let me turn that off. So here we have, this is what I do. And again, for me, this is a woman. This is, you know, I know this is probably sexist and dumb, or, but I think beauty, I think, you know, she, it must look crisp, clean, beautiful, the line work, everything else. So here, look at the decisions that I made. I kind of opened that up a little bit, and in here, you know, there's kind of the same approach of coming out of the light, but there's different texture there.
Yeah.
If you look at it, you know, these are different from these lines, from these lines, from these lines, from these lines, and from these lines. So for me, I'm trying to keep the harmony, but if I were to ink, it's just my interpretation. Okay. And so I want to be clear about that. If I were to ink every line coming out of the blacks in the same way, to me, the work would look a little bit, you know, monotone, and it wouldn't have that beauty and that spontaneity that the pencils have.
Yeah, that's
So again, like,
understandable.
yeah, more traditional coming out of the black stuff. And then here in light, you know, there's more, it's like more open to interpretation. So as I got closer here, you know, I'm going to give the illusion that there's, you know, less light there. And as you can see, it's kind of fading into whatever Andrew's going to do with the colors here.
Yeah.
So put a
Awesome.
lot of line weight, and vary the line here and the energy. So that's different than I'm going to ink, you know, her face. So that I allowed to be a lot more loose here. There's again here, even there, and this is just specifically how I feel about it, right? There's three different ways about how I go about that, about how the line's going up into the darkness or into the darker part of the knee. So That's just again my interpretation. I don't want to offend anybody. Everybody's interpretation, or it's art. It's so their expression is valid, and I'm a fan of many people. Everybody can ink however they want. So very clean coming in out of the blacks here because it's leather. So I can't really have it all scratchy for me. Um, and then the helmet, I ended up putting a little bit more texture. The lips, love getting in there with the lips and giving it expression. And even in the lips here, if you look, three different ways
Yep.
of pulling black. Okay. So again, I keep insisting on that, but it just gives it the illusion. That's why I think people look at my stuff and they think, or they and people tell me this all the time, that it doesn't look um digital. Well, it's digital and it looks digital if you know pull into it, but if you add so many more textures, even when you're trying to be clean in the face, and then here, well, it's the helmet and it's organic. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to add a lot more bloops. If you add that, this classic Scott Williams stuff at the end of your line, then half your battle is. But if I were to do that on every single line coming out of every line, then everything's going to look like a texture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
gonna lose the image. You're gonna lose the beauty of the pencils, and you're gonna overpower it. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not. So pulling out of those lines is different. I can't put that bloop everywhere out on every line. And there, again, beauty. It's a girl, so we try to put that in the eyes. Don't want to mess with them, so they look nice and solid and beautiful. Let's see if I can get another image here.
And we have a
Um,
question from the chat here. They're asking, has your approach changed compared to 25 years ago? Or 25 plus years ago?
um, yes, it has. I think that I have more knowledge, but more than anything else, I've evolved as an artist, and my craft is better now. You know, um, just because I wasn't as talented giftedly or technically as all the other guys that were coming into the industry. I think in terms of raw potential, I was pretty good, but it's really difficult to compete. I don't care what area of expertise or line of work you're in. It's really hard to compete when someone has been doing that for the entire life, and whose sole purpose in life is to become an artist. We have a lot. I train a lot of goalkeepers, and from the first day, I can tell you that some of them have what it takes and the desire and determination to make it at a high level. There's a lot of factors involved, but yes, I it has changed quite a bit. So we're talking a little bit about you know how I was approaching um, the female character. Now, this obviously is a different type of character, so he's a lot gritty and one of the funniest guys I've ever, I think, personally.
Oh, yeah, he looks like quite the challenge. He has like dreads, there's chrome on him.
Yeah, so you look at this immediately. I'm gonna texturize this guy, and I'm gonna get looser and bloopier, and I'm gonna get in line with the hair. I created a pressure brush just specifically for that reason, because if I use like a different brush, it will take me forever. But that hair is gonna probably take me like maybe 10 minutes. The entire hair, less than that, 7 minutes, because I used a pressure brush, and I just with pressure and sensitivity, I can pull thick and thin, variations of the line. So you're gonna see texture in here. From in here, his face. I'm gonna get in there. Let's see if we can look at the pencils first. Oops, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So here's his pencils. I went there and I broke everything up a little even more, because that's what I wanted to convey out of the character. I wanted to stand out, from the background, from different things. Here, I'll give you guys a pretty good glimpse about this page here. And so again, the same process. How am I going to do? What am I going to do? And the danger here is, they're awfully obviously on two different planes. Um, the lost urban prints and the character on the background. But if I go and I make the lines too thick here, it's going to look weird and forced. So The delicate balance is in finding out what the right line thickness is on the the character on the foreground and the background. So there's still that separation, but it's not gonna look like really, animation like. It's gonna still have that keep that texture and stuff. And then here again, this is where I kind of let loose a little bit more in the texture of the backgrounds. Uh, this is like I think where everything became a little bit easier for me because I created a couple of brushes that made everything so much easier. Here, um, that's a different brush right here. Um, Normally here, and then a little bit more here. The texture in there. I'm not a big splatter guy because I love what Brett does so much that I mean I wish I'd have kept the layers here, but if I take the splatter out, you're gonna see all the line work and all the beautiful black forms that he put in there. But I'll put it in occasionally, um, just a little bit. And here's the backgrounds really loose because I want them to stand out and differentiate them from the crispness of the character. Let's see here. Let me see what else I can share. A little bit of a WildStorm piece. I did a commission piece, and this is a little bit more traditional for me. I didn't get in there really quick, but you can see all that detail in there. I don't have the pencils here on this. I think this might just be a flattened tip. I wanted to give you guys a different look of how I go about it. So here, if you look at the texture of his face, he's Dayton's made out of metal. So I want him to have that, that metallic feeling. If you get up close into his face, you can see that. And again, the female characters, the hair, everything changes for me because it has to be crisp and clean and flowing. Um, Here I can get in there and make some textures. And then this is a little bit, I don't really ink like this anymore, but these lines have a lot of that old vintage Wildstorm um Scott Williams look to it there. And there's just pulled lines, squiggly line here. We go in here and you know make the face really delicate. And from here I kind of want to mimic that. There's that leather look, but it's also I want it to look a little shiny. So hopefully we convey that pulled with kind of a brush look out of the texture of the leather. Coming out of the blacks, again, this is you know really fun because there's so much stuff and so much is open to interpretation. The splatter, again, if I didn't put that splatter there, you could see the rock a little bit better, but it seems like a lot of people are doing it, so throw that in there. Small little detail. Again, I like to make, you know, within that area here, you have three different ways of looking
Yep.
um out of pulling out of the black. So to me, that's going to give it texture, and it's not even something that you're not going to immediately look at it and say, wow, he used three different textures there. But overall, when you pull out, there's a unif there's there's something that belongs. It pulls it all together and it makes it look more organic for me. um get in there with the rocks. Again, I'm not big on using whites, but it's something that I've started to do and incorporate. If you look at this technique here, and this is what I want to show you guys, all of these lines here, or the vast majority of them, they're different types of line here. Okay. This is just what I like to do, is because it gives it a different flavor, a different look. Won't do that as much in other areas, but here I wanted to give that sense, of spontaneity and randomness to it. Look at this wolf character here, tons of line, like old school pulling out of the blacks that I used to love to do. different textures, different lines, different forms of expression. So I'd encourage everybody to go out there, you know, and flow and kind of let it loose. Don't think about it too much. Take those some of those elements that are successful, that are pleasing, that you like, and then this is just. I think I pulled this into Adobe Fresco, and I was thinking, oh, what would it be like to work on Adobe Fresco? Let me see if it's easier to find like something, because you can, at the time, I think you can pull the brushes from Photoshop into Adobe Fresco. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm pretty sure some of those Kyle Webster brushes I can take into Adobe Fresco. So I did, and I found this brush to put in the background because it was just an empty background. And so hopefully it works for everybody.
Yeah,
Let's
I like it. I think it works.
see if I can do another image, and so that you guys can see a little bit more of what I mean in terms of like the difference with the ink. So if you take a peek at this image here, you're gonna see how it's a lot looser and there's a lot more energy to it, because that's the feel that I want to give to it. The Lancelot piece, if I were to ink it this way, it wouldn't work for me. It's just personally how I feel about it, because I wanted the beauty of the pencil to translate. And I kind of, we if I were to overpower it with textures and things like that, it wouldn't work as well for me. Um, I love doing backgrounds. I don't know why. Probably like in not in the high percentage of the people that like to do that. But to me, I love this. When I get this and I see this, and there's these file cabinets that are halfway destroyed with documents sticking out. To me, that's awesome, and that's where I can let loose, because I don't really. I don't have to worry about the lips. So to me, it's just like ultimate form of expression. I can do whatever in terms of the line weight. See, so if you see here, random energy, just want the debris to show through the image. um Here, just another big shot. I probably think I use, okay, so here, this is the mapping pen, the right here, um that from Clip Studio. So I do use some of the stock brushes sometimes. um the metal here, you don't want to have the metal to have the same texture as the background here.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so just develop a way of being able to differentiate that. And another thing I like to do is, most of the brushwork that I work is that I the brushes that I use are very clean. And every now and then, I like to throw in brushes that have a little bit of a texture. You see the difference between the outline of this brush and the outline of that brush here. So it has an edge to it, and you can't really see it, but there's tiny difference and variations in the naked eye. And I think maybe it's an illusion, but when you see it, it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. Then there's a little bit more randomness to it. And then here is just a simple brush here I use on the background on another layer, and then whatever I overflows onto the other layer, just go back to that layer and erase it out. But
Yeah.
again, this gives their depth and texture. Let's see if there's anything else in this page to show. Let's see, look back here. Let me look at some of the stuff here. Oh, okay. Just I like to get in there with texture a lot in the backgrounds. So here's a really good opportunity to get in their forms of expression, whatever you want, cross hatching over cross hatching. And it's a dilapidated corridor and an abandoned building somewhere. So what are we gonna do? We're just gonna throw and try to portray those elements and the textures of the backgrounds. But if I was going to ink every figure and everything like that, then it just wouldn't work for me. But then again, that's my approach, like I was saying. So we can get in there with a lot of textures and, you know, with there's a lot of latitude. So get in there, do your thing, and figure out what works for you. Backgrounds, texture. Let's show you guys a couple of more images from here. Um, Wanted to share this piece here too because I think it's beautiful. And again, just to kind of, this is a different scene, so I can't put all that texture in it. Maybe in the trees, but it's also snowing. So you know, to me, and I think of, okay, these great female characters, and I'm thinking about, okay, I want to portray the beauty of what Brett has put down. It's a snowing scene. It's not gonna have a lot of texture, maybe some in the bark of the trees. So it's gonna be a lot more harmonious in terms of my approach and what I try to put down on the paper. So again, very delicate, and just kind of I want to accentuate the expression and the storytelling from Brett. So you have to think about those elements as well. Is she frowning? Is she smiling? Are those, pouty lips, that sort of thing. The texture here, kind of keep it to a minimum because, again, it's a snowing scene. You know, there's smoke here and some fire on the tree. So, you know, I'm probably going to add a splatter there. Texture on the backgrounds. I probably wouldn't do that, but it's something I'm trying to experiment with. And again, the hair to me has to be flawless, um, but flowing. So I don't know if that translates, but that's what I'm thinking. That's what I have in mind. It's got to be beautiful. It's got to catch your eye, and it's got to have that randomness and fullness, and especially with him because he does amazing hair. It's beautiful. So I want that. I want to portray that, and I want it to shine through. I don't want to overpower it, but I want to add the lines and the thickness to it. If I inked it too thin, it's not gonna translate. This is dark, heavy hair, beautiful curls. So that's what we're gonna do. And the face, you know, we want to we we want to portray the storytelling elements. So here, if you look at her face, when Brett and everything that Brett drew, he's giving you a roadmap. The expression in her face tells you everything about the storytelling aspect of it. So I want to be really conscious about that. The expression of her face, the frown, the eyebrow. I want to make the eyes look really nice and crisp and clean. Because that, in my opinion, this is what this calls for. Um, then a little bit more texture here. But I won't go very heavily on it. Really clean out of the blacks, because that's how I see it there with her uniform. Then here again, you know, the hair, it needs to be flawless because he's rendered and drawn it so beautifully that we want to have to translate that. I like to make the eyes very nice and clean, and you know so you can see everything. And in there, when it calls for it, now this is a fierce look. Now she she has more emotions, she's in danger, so try to portray that. And then the lines there, you're gonna keep that sexiness, that beautiful aspect to the fair and everything. But now, if we get a little bit more into the line work, and we add some different elements and some textures and some bloops, then you can let it become a part of the storytelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep, it does. Like you said earlier, the more, for this example, the more bloops you add in, like the more energetic it looks, and it's a bit
Yeah.
more
So
rugged, maybe. So yeah, the angrier she gets, it makes sense that she's gonna have like a couple of bloops on her.
so I try to think about those elements as I'm looking at the page, and I'm not sure what he's looking at, but what he's thinking, but I'm pretty sure it's somehow along the same lines. So here it changes. the element of surprise, the bloops kept to a minimum, because we don't want to. There's a sense of danger, but there's also sense of wonder. What is going on? You know, more of that here. Still, the beauty of the pencils and the beauty of his style. And what's I can't say this enough. It's a pleasure to work on his stuff. It's a pleasure to be a part of this. This project. The hair, and then here. Okay, now there's some expression. Now we have some issues, right? And if possible, can you put that and convey it to the viewer? And no one's going to really look at this and say, without me explaining it, well, okay, the expression, something's changed, something's clearly different. But I want to be able to try to tell you that, right? I don't want you to think, okay, he did this 10 lines that are different here and edgier here, you know. But as I don't want to ink everything the same, because it then is not a part of the storytelling. That is just
Yep.
overpowering something. Yeah. Um, Again, same fluid movement, beauty. And the bloops are there, but it's not as edgy. See? So we get back to that sense of wonder. Oh wow, I can't believe I did that. I probably would have hatched the hell out of that too. But I didn't. I don't know what was on. So break up the lines here, keep the major blacks. Mm. And then again back to that sense of wonder. And so there's a lot to inking, and there's a lot, in my opinion, to the storytelling aspect of it. And I think kind of give you a little bit of a window into what my process is like and how I go about it. It's not. I'm not saying is the right way. It's just the way I go about it and how I see and feel these things. So again, there it is. Let's look at a couple more.
It sure
'Cause
is a way that makes it look good.
I probably will talk forever, if you let me. Um, some looser stuff here. Let's see. Okay, here we have pencils. Let's see this. So I think I showed you this page earlier. So I got in there a
Yep.
lot, and again, I love backgrounds. It's just I see the backgrounds on Brett's pieces, and I know I'm gonna have so much fun doing the backgrounds. I'm probably like it's insane, but I'll probably be like, okay, I'm gonna do those backgrounds that are gonna be lovely. I'm not gonna go straight to that guy's face. I'm going straight to the backgrounds because that's just gonna be super fun. So there, the backgrounds, a little bit of what it looks like finished. Um, Again, this is a different image. This has to have a different look, in my opinion. So if you were to look at the images I just showed you from the previous page, there's a completely different aspect. I mean, a completely different feeling of the page. Because we have a snow, softer scene, and now we have this gritty, dilapidated building, and our heroes are, facing whatever danger. So there's a million textures in here coming out of the black in there. I really, this is what he had in mind. And again, he's an amazing guy and a great guy. So I'll ask him, look, it'll be okay if I do this. Boom. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Or no, I mean, no, I don't think, Sal, I don't think that works as well. I think just to kind of illustrate a point here in the background, I had used, I put a zip, that was a gradation from dark to light. So I ran it by him, and he said, "No, I don't think that's a good look." And he was right. He's 1,000% right, because it was taking away too much from the foreground character. The busyness of the zip and the pattern was taken away from it. So I hope that is coming across. What I'm trying to talk about, like,
Yeah, I mean,
even with
I'm an artist, so I grasp these concepts, and if anyone in chat would like some more clarification, if I could talk, they're free to ask for it. But yeah, I can
if
agree with
anybody needs.
Brett on that. That if it was too busy, then when you add the business of the foreground character as well, it's just going to blend in too much. And with
It
the
was,
white
yeah.
squarish element there, it just creates just enough contrast.
that's why, I'm always running things by him. And I'm a firm believer on the hair part of it. I talked to Andrew Dahlhaus, and he always talks to me about how he loves how I draw the hair. But here, there has to be a beauty to it. I don't have a lot of hair myself, so I'm vicariously living through other people's hair here and the hair that I ink. Um, I'm starting to put some textures and zip. This is kind of what I had in, behind that character in the background, but that didn't work well. This here, just to add a sense of this to the storytelling, and again, thinking of the storytelling aspects of it, I just added that, that background there with that texture, and always in a very respectful way, and asking if he approves of it, because I can't say this enough. Is his vision, and I'm just a tool. This sounds ridiculous, but I'm just kind of a tool for him to get his vision out to you guys. He's the genius, he's the creator, he is the man, the myth, the legend behind all of this. And so I have no illusions about that. I'm just kind of this tool, or this nail in a larger in the larger scheme of things. Um, the shadow, no, we have some shadow. The shadow beneath the um, the hair. I can't believe I didn't do this. I don't know how I contained myself and added like 10,000 more lines there. But if he's going up and getting closer to, that's just really basic stuff. But people may not think about that if you're starting out. So the line is getting thicker as you go up. That's sort of elemental, basic, fundamental thing. Um, let's see what else. And here, this is so if you saw all that bloopy, scratchy, you know, parts of how I sometimes ink his stuff here. If you look in here, you can see all the texture, because again, it's completely redundant, but it's an all dilapidated building. So you're gonna see the opposite of that. This piece is very dear, and I hold it close to my heart because through the early years at WildStorm, this is a childhood from my superhero from my childhood, and through the years at WildStorm, I always wanted to ask Brett to do a commission piece. Finally, we reconnected and working together. So I had him draw this for me, but I wanted to do the opposite of that because this character is, in terms of his ideals and character, he's more of like a Superman type. So I wanted to make everything really super clean. So I was kind of thinking about, I had Sandra Hope in mind, Alex Garner, that kind of stuff. And I'm actually going to have her ink the original piece.
Ooh.
Um,
No, that's
yes,
a treat.
so she is going to crush me, but it's okay. I can live with that. So I wanted to make this really super clean because of the character, and again, they think of the storytelling elements, and they're important to me. So this is probably the cleanest you'll ever see my line, and she has these really wonderful holding lines. To me, they're the best in the business. Again, I don't want to offend anybody, but her holding line is so beautiful. Where she puts where she accentuates the weight is just flawless to me. And it's, again, you know, I love a lot of elements of Bat and Scott Williams, and they're my two favorite inkers. But um, you know, in no particular order, we have Sandra after that. Danny Mickey, Gardner. I don't want to leave Klaus Janson. I don't want to leave an idiot. But if you look at this line, it's probably about as crisp and as clean as you're going to get. So, and keeping those same elements of the character, together. I wouldn't ink bet stuff like this because it's just too clean. And but to me there's a certain element, and I don't want it to kind of treat myself and ink this in that sort of way. He's that character. The villain, again, you know, it's kind of it's a reverse flash type deal. So it's a kind of like a mirror image. So here, he's the villain. What am I going to do? I'm going to thicken the eyes, the eyeline, put a little bit of eyeliner in there. Now you see there's more bloops in the face, more
Yeah.
wrinkles. So that's just how I go about it. It's just kind of my little take on it. If somebody does a beautiful job and they ink everything the same way, or that's fine. More power to them. And it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I love everybody's approaches to everything. So again, there's more thickness to his work, but the line I wanted it to be very harmonious. Again, there's different types of textures and off the line coming out of the black. And I think that's kind of what gives the illusion when people tell me that it looks more organic and it doesn't look like it's digital. I think is the randomness of it, because you have to pull them all apart. I mean, I think they'd look kind of digital, but it's just the different elements there. There's so many of them, so many ways of rendering, that I think that's what happens. That's what gives that illusion.
Yeah, most likely because, like you said, there are so many lines that when you see something digitally, you usually think, oh, they just use that one brush they always use to render everything. But when you see like three different render techniques, and you're like, okay, wait a minute, there's something to this
Yeah,
piece.
yeah. So I don't use. I don't think I could, but I don't think I use. Right now, I'm using about 20 brushes, and again, it's kind of dumb because some of them have the same functions, but they still have like really tiny variations. So it kind of works for me. So I'm just having fun with it, and I think I'm going to narrow it down to maybe like 5 or 6 of them. But because right now I'm using too much and it's taking too long to scroll down and look for them. You
Oh yeah,
know, I'm going to start separating them into different. Let's see. Let's share a couple more images because I know it's getting. Oh, again, yeah. So more how everything changes for me, and you know the character. I just love the way he draws the female form.
yeah,
The
he's very good at drawing the
he's,
ladies.
he's a genius. Um, just like look at this, the way he just contorted this leg. It's beautiful and it works. You know. So again, even in this piece, this is the page before the double I just showed you guys. So minimal line, just want to keep it nice and beautiful, and illustration like there, because it's an eye. I don't want to get it all broken up and weird here. um Coming out of the black, look again, different ways of doing it. Hold nice holding line, and then just I want it to make an impact. I as best as I can, I want to portray the beauty of his style, my interpretation of it, and hopefully that translates into what I'm doing. The thickness of the hair, the fullness of the hair, the harmony of it, because he draws some of the best, hair in my opinion. The How much it flows and all of that. Here, a little bit more different technique coming out of the black. Not as much as it was before. More textures and line weights. That's it. Let's see, maybe a couple more images, and then maybe I'll show you guys, um, a different piece. This is uh some spun work when I was helping them out because they needed help on it. There it is. So you can just guys see a little bit of my take on it. Um,
Yeah, his work on Spawn is also awesome. It was about damn time he did Spawn because I've been saying it for years that if someone were to do like a proper long run on Spawn, it has to be Brett.
he is amazing. I mean, you can put Brett on anything. Then I think I just kind of want to show you guys what. Oh, this is a good image. I wish I had pulled it up. But this is kind of ironic. I want to give a shout out to Andrew and the amazing work that he does on his colors. I'm always bugging him whenever Brett and he does a cover or something like that, some work outside of this. I'm always begging him. So is it my turn to apologize to him? Is it done? Have you finished that? And
Yeah,
so I
he
want
he
to give
does
him a
some
shout out.
great color work.
This is beautiful, and this is kind of like it's just kind of ironic to me here because in this piece, these are characters from Tyler and Alejandro Ale,
Yeah.
and I worked with Tyler for a long, long time, and I did a run on a Fathom with Alejandro, and like these three guys outside of the amazing guys that I from time to time got to work on, like Jim Lee and Wills. I mean, I did entire issues with Wills, and helped Scott a lot when he was behind on his stuff, but and Mark Silvestri occasionally. But these guys I enjoyed working on a lot. Brett, Tyler, and Alejandro. So to have this piece, Brett drawing these full characters, it's kind of like a Terminator, Back to the Future kind of thing. I don't know.
Nice.
Really, it's really weird. So let's just show you a little bit more of like kind of the finished artwork, what it looks like.
Yeah, I've seen this running around. This is awesome.
This is an amazing, amazing piece of work. Amazing, amazing job by Andrew. Oh, this is a low res. Jeez. Nope, I don't. I mean, I have a Sapphire Rush, so we'll show you this. The cover from.
Yeah, this was the first piece I saw inked by you.
Yes,
When Brett was randomly, hey, Sal is back.
man. A few words, huh? Yeah. So if you just look at this is just the beauty of how he renders the hair and how much more he adds to what he does. So it's no wonder that Brad likes his work so much. So shout out to Andrew. Please
Yeah,
color my piece right away.
he is awesome. He's one of my favorite colorists.
It's amazing. Um, Maybe just show you guys a little bit.
Yeah, you talking about the beauty uniformity of the line when inking ladies really got me thinking because that's the thing I'm currently struggling with is how to maintain the grace and femininity when inking ladies. And it's maybe that I need to pull back on my online because it's like it's not a continuous smooth line, it's like more like a stop and go with a little bit too much blipping and blopping.
Yeah, I just don't want to. Just don't want to blip there. And then here, this is kind of. I guess I might be kind of a strange guy, but this background here, this I love doing this stuff. These rocks and pieces and this alleyway with the flies and the trash can and these pipes. You know, this is where I really, really love getting into. There's another guy I didn't mention him before, but he's an amazing, amazing artist, and he was someone that I really a top cow who I really admired and who's an amazing, amazing artist. And his name is Joe Weens. I'm not sure if you're aware of him, but
Oh yeah.
he he was an influence on my work because you could just see in his artwork, and it's one thing to look at someone's work on the printed page, but there isn't words cannot express for someone who hasn't seen Scott Williams or Bat or Joe Weems originals. There's a life after that as an inker. Once you see the originals, there's like a differently a before and after. And he used to, get in there in the backgrounds. And so for here, this brush, see how it's really loose here in the background. If you look at this window here, that's just a brush that I created to mimic um, the the feel of like a Raphael brush, when you stop and turn and everything else.
Yep.
So if you look at that if you look at that texture, again, you probably wouldn't know that it's done with a digital tool, but it's just like this digital tool. And people, again, I want to emphasize this. People talk to me all the time about the tools, and will I share my brushes or will I sell them? And I just here's my advice. Again, I'm going to say this and be redundant about it, but take those elements from your favorite influences and try to apply them into your work. Your people may not see them in you, people may not see the reflection of that influence in you, but you're going to come up with something. But you have to have something in mind before you put your you know your pen to paper, or before you pick up the digital tool. You have to have an idea of what you want to do. And so that's why I kind of want to take this time to demystify all of that, because the brush is not going to ink for you. It's what you have in your mind and the fundamentals of where you're trying to get across in the page. Because I can use that mapping pen to ink an entire page. I just have to use the eraser. I just have to use stop and pull and bloops, and what I do is I just created different brushes for different functions, but I can use that entire brush to ink an entire piece. Um, so but here, getting in the backgrounds, let me see if I just getting in there if there's anything else here. But I think that just pretty much about covers it. Hopefully it was a great experience for you guys as well,
Oh yeah,
because for me
we covered a lot, and I picked up quite a few things that I can literally implement right now.
yeah, if you feel like you'd like to have me back one day, then maybe I can ink a panel if it's okay with Brett, and then I'll probably I could share more about the tools, the settings, and things like that. But I wanted to take the opportunity to let people know how I work, the dimensions that I use, and not so much the tools, but the fundamentals, or how I go about the process of what goes in my head, because you need to have an idea of what you're going to do before you put it to paper.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I think the biggest takeaway is that last bit. If you don't have a vision in your head about what you want to do and how you want it to look like, there's no brush on earth that can help you achieve that.
Yeah, so, and a lot of the times, just play around with the settings. There's a lot of tutorials and Procreate. Um, if you follow their Instagram account, they have a lot of tutorials on how to make brushes and the different settings for them. So 95% of the brushes that I came up with, I had something in mind, but I kind of stumbled upon it and I liked it, so it's something that I incorporated into what I do. But it doesn't matter who's selling the brushes out there. It's really about, what you have in mind, what you're going to put down to the paper, whether you're using, because the Clip Studio stock brushes to me are great brushes. The Procreate inking brushes, not so much. I don't think I could do a professional page with them. Uh, but I do understand they're not the brush engine, but the tools and the settings, and I'm more familiar with that, so I can come up with the brushes. And it's very easy. You just have to take a look at the uh, at at the different settings on the brushes, and then come up with your own brush shapes, and then go from there. That's the advice I'd give to anybody.
Awesome. That is awesome advice. And before I let you go, where can people find you and follow you?
I do have a Facebook page, but I don't. It was just made solely with the purpose of being a part of that WildStorm group, and I just kind of led into this. But I think I'm thinking about starting my own Twitter account. I do have one, but it's not. I never post on it. Um, Probably on Instagram. If you have any questions that you want to ask me directly, feel free to contact me. As you can attest to this, I
Oh yeah.
try to respond to every comment because to me it's important and you can make a difference. There are so many you know gaps that I could have bridged. Somebody just tell me what if they can give anybody any advice on any particular matter regarding art or goalkeeping, I'll be here to respond your questions. Twitter, I'll probably get into it, get on it, and right now Instagram is the best way to reach me.
Yeah, but from what I hear, you and Brett are like the two people that do the most in regards to like responding to people's questions about art. Especially he on Twitter, he often just does like very quick like fixes or adjustments to people like, hey, why does my leg not work in this drawing? He like do like a 10-second sketch.
I love putting up a little. I would probably do if someone knows how to do this from a technical standpoint. If you could show me, because I'm not tech savvy. If you could show me how I can cast my screen onto, my iPad screen onto YouTube or Instagram, I would probably do a daily video just so that people can take a look at what I'm doing because I like
Instagram,
and
I think Instagram has it built in. I
oh,
think they
but
have requirements, but they should have it built in.
to share my screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll look into that. I mean, I'm really excited. Like there's like I mentioned before, I know I love Jonathan Glapion. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering his name, but and Enriquez. And there's a whole new wave, and I'm excited for the future. In terms of what new inking styles and techniques are coming up, and I can't wait to see what happens. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a
It's
great
gonna be
time.
awesome. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure. It was a privilege. Thank to you, chat, for also showing up. This was a Bringing Better Comics, and I will see you guys in the next episode.